My name is Eli Mercer, 42 years old. For 16 years, I believed I had a faithful wife, a solid marriage, a real partnership. 16 years of working double shifts, fixing engines, building trust, all of it a carefully constructed lie. It collapsed on a Friday evening at our family cabin. One unfamiliar red Tesla parked behind the woodshed. That single detail changed everything. What did I find inside? My wife's wedding ring on the nightstand. A stranger's expensive watch beside it. Laughter I hadn't heard in years. Within 72 hours, a suspended chamber membership, exposed financial fraud, frozen accounts, and a town that would never forget. And Grant Griffin, the most charming real estate agent in town, was still adjusting his cufflinks that morning, completely unaware the ground beneath him had already disappeared. Before I tell you what happened next, if you enjoy stories about justice and family boundaries, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? Drop a comment and let me know. The GPS said we'd arrived, but something felt wrong about the whole picture. Our family cabin sat nestled between towering pines, windows glowing warm against the Maine twilight, and Vanessa's BMW parked crooked in the gravel drive like she'd been in a hurry. My name's Eli Mercer, and I fix things for a living. Mechanical engineer by trade, but around here, I'm the guy who gets your generator running when the power goes out or builds you a deck that won't collapse when your in-laws visit. I pride myself on attention to detail, which is probably why I noticed the second car tucked behind the woodshed, a flashy red Tesla that definitely wasn't ours. Dad, whose car is that? Max asked from the back seat. At 15, he inherited my suspicious nature and his mother's sharp eyes. Good question, kiddo. I pulled our truck next to Vanessa's BMW and cut the engine. Your mom said she needed a solo retreat to work on her PR campaign proposals. Guess she found herself some company. Jamie, my 12-year-old, pressed his face against the window. Maybe it's Aunt Lizzie. Lizzie drives a Honda, not a spaceship, Max replied, already unbuckling his seatbelt. I sat there for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, watching shadows move behind the cabin's drawn curtains. Vanessa had been acting strange for months, working late, taking calls in the garage, buying new clothes she claimed were for client meetings, the kind of behavior that makes a man start paying closer attention to details. Boys, grab your gear and wait by the truck, I said, keeping my voice level. Let me go check on your mom first. The cabin's front door was unlocked, which struck me as odd since Vanessa always double-checked locks. I stepped inside, hearing voices from the back bedroom. Her laugh bright and musical, the way it used to sound when we first met. Then a man's voice, deep and unfamiliar, saying something that made her giggle again. The bedroom door stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see movement, shadows dancing on the wall. I pushed it open just wide enough to get a full view of the situation. There was my wife of 16 years, tangled up with Grant Griffin, Griff to his friends, the town's most successful real estate agent and biggest show-off. His expensive watch lay on the nightstand next to her wedding ring, and his clothes were scattered across the floor like he'd been in quite the hurry. Well, this is cozy, I announced, stepping into the room. Vanessa's scream could have shattered glass. Griff tried to sit up, got tangled in the sheets, and tumbled off the bed with all the grace of a drunk moose. I had to admire his tan. Clearly, he'd been spending plenty of time at the country club pool. Eli. Vanessa clutched the blanket to her chest, eyes wide with panic. What are you doing here? Funny thing about surprise visits, I said, leaning against the doorframe. They tend to be surprising. Griff finally managed to stand up, grabbing for his boxers. Now look here, Mercer. No, you look here. I stepped forward, and something in my expression made him take a step back. You're in my cabin with my wife making yourself comfortable in my bed. I'm thinking you should probably leave. Dad, Max's voice came from the hallway. Everything okay? Everything's fine, son. I called back, not taking my eyes off Griff. Just having a conversation with Mr. Griffin about property values. Griff's face went pale. The last thing a real estate agent wants is his personal business becoming public knowledge in a small town. Eli, we can discuss this like reasonable adults. Reasonable adults don't sneak around behind their families' backs, I replied. But hey, I'm learning all sorts of new things today. Vanessa found her voice again. The boys don't need to see this. You're absolutely right. I agreed. They don't need to see their mother's boyfriend scrambling for his pants like a teenager caught by his parents. That's when Max appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, and started laughing. Not the reaction anyone expected. Oh man, he said, grinning. Mom's having an affair with the Tesla guy. This is better than cable TV. Jamie squeezed past his brother to peek into the room. Is that why you've been so weird lately, Mom? Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Griff finally got his boxers on and reached for his shirt, but I was faster. I snatched it off the chair and held it out of reach. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. You're going to walk out of here exactly as you are, get in your fancy car, and drive away. If I see you on my property again, we'll have a different kind of conversation. You can't just, Griff started. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick photo of him standing there in his underwear looking like a deer caught in headlights. Smile for the camera, Griff. This one's going in the Christmas card. He lunged for the phone, but Max stuck out his foot and sent him stumbling into the dresser. The lamp crashed to the floor, and suddenly everyone was moving at once. That's enough. Vanessa shouted, but nobody was listening. Griff tried to push past me toward the door, and I grabbed his arm. He swung wildly, catching me in the shoulder. So, I returned the favor with a solid punch to his jaw. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to remind him that mechanical engineers tend to have strong hands. He went down hard, banging his head against the wall, and came up with a nice shiner forming around his left eye. Max whooped with approval. Boys, outside, I ordered, tossing Griff his shirt. Let Mr. Griffin get dressed so he can leave. This isn't over, Mercer. Griff snarled, pulling on his clothes. Oh, but it is, I replied. Jingling his car keys. I found these on the floor. Funny how things just disappear sometimes. His face went from red to purple. Give me my keys. They'll be at the sheriff's office tomorrow. I said, you can explain to Dave why you need them back. Griff stormed out, still buttoning his shirt, and I heard the front door slam hard enough to rattle the windows. Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. How could you do this in front of the boys? She whispered. I didn't do anything, I replied. I just showed up at the wrong time, or maybe the right time, depending on how you look at it. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a text from Griff asking if she was okay. I picked it up and showed her the display. Cute emoji, I said. Really captures the romance of the moment. She snatched the phone away. You don't understand. I understand plenty. I headed toward the door, then stopped and looked back. Pack your things, Vanessa. When you're ready to talk like adults, you know where to find me. Outside, the boys were leaning against the truck, watching Griff pace beside his Tesla like a caged animal. How's he going to get home without keys? Jamie asked. That's his problem to solve, I replied. Maybe he can call someone for a ride. Can we stay and watch? Max asked hopefully. Nope. We've got better things to do. I started the truck and backed out of the driveway, leaving Griff standing there in the gathering darkness. As we drove away, I caught Vanessa watching from the cabin window. She looked small and lost, nothing like the confident woman who'd been laughing in another man's arms an hour ago. "Dad." Jamie's voice was quiet from the back seat. "Yeah, buddy. Are you and Mom getting divorced?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet, son. But whatever happens, you and Max are going to be fine. That's a promise." Max snorted. "Mom's the one who should be worried. You've got that look." "What look?" "The same one you get when someone brings you a broken engine and swears they didn't do anything to it." Smart kid. He was absolutely right. I did have that look because Vanessa had just handed me a puzzle to solve and I was very good at solving puzzles. The question was whether she'd like the solution I came up with. My phone rang as we pulled into our driveway. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Whatever she had to say could wait until I'd had time to think. The message light blinked at me like a warning beacon, but I ignored it. Some conversations are worth having and others are just noise. After 16 years of marriage, I'd learned the difference. The next morning started with Vanessa's car in my driveway and the sound of her key in the front door. I was in my workshop, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of tools and half-finished projects when she found me hunched over my laptop. "We need to talk," she announced, looking perfectly put together despite yesterday's drama. That was Vanessa. She could survive a tornado and emerge with her makeup intact. "Good morning to you, too," I replied without looking up from the screen. "Sleep well?" "Don't be sarcastic, Eli. This situation requires mature handling." I finally raised my eyes to meet hers. She'd chosen her outfit carefully. The navy blue dress that made her look professional and trustworthy, paired with the pearl necklace I'd bought for our 10th anniversary. Classic Vanessa using every tool in her arsenal. "Mature handling," I repeated. "Like sneaking around behind your family's back for months. It wasn't supposed to happen this way." She perched on the edge of my workbench, careful not to disturb the engine parts I'd been organizing. "Griff and we just connected on a professional level and then you connected on a personal level in our family cabin." I finished. "I get it. These things happen." Her relief was visible. "I'm glad you understand. We can work through this like civilized people." "Absolutely." I turned the laptop screen toward her. "That's why I've been doing some civilized financial planning this morning." The color drained from her face as she stared at the bank statements displayed on the monitor. Our joint checking account showed a balance of $47. The savings account was completely empty. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I moved our money to a new account," I explained calmly. Amazing how much easier banking gets when you know all the passwords and security questions. "Turns out you've been using our anniversary date for everything. You can't just steal our money." "I didn't steal anything. I relocated marital assets to prevent further unauthorized spending." I clicked to the next screen, showing her credit card statements. "Interesting purchases lately. Dinner at Romano's. That's expensive for a solo meal. Hotel room in Portland last month when you said you were visiting your sister. New lingerie from that boutique downtown." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "You had no right to go through my personal. I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "Sweetheart, when you use our joint credit card to finance your affair, it becomes our business." She stood up abruptly, knocking over a coffee can full of bolts. They scattered across the concrete floor like metallic rain. "This is exactly why I needed someone else, Eli. You're controlling and paranoid and then observant," I added. "Don't forget observant." My phone buzzed with a text message, then another, then a whole string of them all arriving within seconds of each other. I glanced at the screen and couldn't help smiling. "What?" Vanessa demanded. "Looks like someone's having a rough morning." I showed her the display. "Griff's been trying to reach you. Apparently, his Tesla won't start." His credit cards were declined at the coffee shop and his assistant is asking questions about why he missed 3 client meetings yesterday. Her face went pale. What did you do? Me? Nothing at all. I leaned back in my chair enjoying the moment. Though I did have an interesting conversation with Rita at the Anchor bar last night. You know Rita, she tends to remember things and she's got a lot of friends in town. The Anchor was where everyone went to catch up on local gossip. Rita had been tending bar there for 20 years, and she knew every secret in town. More importantly, she'd been my friend since high school, long before Vanessa moved here from Boston with her fancy PR degree and big city attitude. You told her about us? Vanessa's voice rose an octave. I didn't have to tell her anything. She figured it out herself when Griff showed up looking like he'd been in a fight, asking to borrow her phone because his was mysteriously not working. That wasn't entirely true. I might have mentioned to Rita that Griff seemed unusually interested in my wife lately, and Rita might have drawn her own conclusions, but Vanessa didn't need to know the details. This is insane, she said, starting to pace. You're acting like a jealous teenager. I'm acting like a man whose wife cheated on him. I corrected. There's a difference. She stopped pacing and fixed me with her most intimidating stare. The one she used on difficult clients and stubborn contractors. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I'm listening. I know about your father's business, Eli. The missing money from the construction contracts right before he passed away. The payments that never made it to the subcontractors. My hands tightened on the armrests of my chair, but I kept my voice steady. My father made some mistakes near the end. That's old news. Is it? She pulled out her phone and scrolled through what looked like email attachments because I have documentation suggesting those mistakes were more intentional than anyone realized. Bank transfers, altered invoices, forged signatures. Where did you get those? Griff has connections in the banking industry. Amazing what people will share when they think they're helping expose fraud. The workshop felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. My father's construction business had collapsed shortly before his heart attack, leaving behind a mess of unpaid bills and angry creditors. I'd spent years rebuilding the family reputation, establishing my own engineering practice, proving that I wasn't cut from the same cloth. What do you want? I asked. I want you to stop this childish revenge campaign, she said. Give me back access to our accounts, stay out of my personal business, and we can discuss separation terms like adults. And if I don't, then everyone in town learns that Eli Mercer comes from a family of thieves. Your business reputation, your clients' trust, your boys standing at school, all of it goes away. She was good. I had to admit, Vanessa had always been good at finding pressure points and applying just enough force to get what she wanted. It's what made her successful in public relations. She understood how to control narratives and manage perceptions. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She assumed I cared more about my reputation than I did about the truth. You know what, Vanessa? Go ahead. I stood up and walked over to where the bolts had scattered, starting to pick them up one by one. Tell everyone in town about my father's business problems. Share those documents with whoever wants to see them. You're calling my bluff. I'm calling your bluff. I dropped the bolts back into their container with deliberate care. Because here's what you don't understand about small towns. People remember everything and they judge you by what you do when nobody's watching. What's that supposed to mean? It means everyone already knows about my father's mistakes. And they know I spent 5 years paying back every penny he owed. They know I work 16-hour days and never charge more than a job is worth. They know I coach Little League and fix their cars for free when money's tight. I moved closer, close enough to see the uncertainty creeping into her eyes. But what they don't know yet is that Vanessa Mercer, successful PR executive, PDA president, pillar of the community, has been sneaking around with Grant Griffin while her husband worked double shifts to pay for her BMW and her designer clothes and her girls' trips to Boston. You wouldn't. I wouldn't have to. Rita's already started asking questions, and you know how fast news travels around here. Give it a week and everyone from the grocery store to the school board will know exactly what kind of person you really are. Vanessa's phone rang, interrupting our standoff. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. Aren't you going to answer that? I asked. Looks like Griff needs you. She declined the call, but it immediately started ringing again. Then a text message appeared. Emergency. Call me now. Trouble in paradise? I inquired. This isn't over, Eli. She headed for the door, then stopped and looked back. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're up against. Enlighten me. I'm not just some cheating wife you can intimidate and embarrass. I'm a professional communicator with 15 years of crisis management experience. If you want to play dirty, I can bury you. So deep you'll never see daylight again. After she left, I sat in the quiet workshop for a long time, thinking about what she'd said. She was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But she was wrong about something else. I did know exactly what I was up against. I was up against someone who thought she could manipulate and control everyone around her. Someone who believed her own publicity about being untouchable. Someone who had forgotten that the best way to win a fight is to make sure your opponent never sees it coming. I opened my laptop and started typing. If Vanessa wanted to play the public relations game, she was about to learn that I'd been paying attention during all those years of listening to her work stories. The first email went to the president of the Chamber of Commerce, where Griff served on the board of directors. The second went to the editor of the local newspaper, who happened to be married to one of my regular customers. The third went to my old friend Dave, who'd been sheriff for the past 8 years and took a dim view of people who caused unnecessary drama in his quiet town. I didn't say much in any of the emails, just asked if they'd heard any interesting gossip lately, and mentioned that I hoped certain people would remember to keep their personal and professional lives appropriately separated. Sometimes the most effective messages are the ones that don't actually say anything at all. The Anchor Bar on a Friday night was exactly where you'd expect to find half the town's population, and Rita had outdone herself with the entertainment. She'd somehow managed to connect her tablet to the big screen TVs and was showing what she claimed were funny pictures from social media to anyone interested in looking. I nursed my beer at the end of the bar, watching Griff's face appear on 3 different screens simultaneously. The photos were artistic masterpieces. Him standing in his underwear looking panicked. Him stumbling over his own feet. Him with a black eye and his shirt half-buttoned. Rita had even added captions. Local businessman caught off guard. And Tesla owner discovers gravity. These are hilarious, announced Pete Morrison, the town's insurance agent. Where did you find them? Oh, they've been making the rounds, Rita replied innocently. You know how these things spread on the internet. Griff himself was conspicuously absent, which was unusual for a Friday night. He typically held court at the corner table, buying drinks for potential clients and telling stories about his latest real estate conquests. Tonight, his regular spot was occupied by a group of construction workers who kept glancing at the screens and chuckling. Eli, Rita called out. How's the family? Can't complain, I replied, raising my beer in acknowledgement. Boys are doing well. Vanessa's been busy with work. I bet she has. Rita's smile was pure innocence, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. Speaking of busy, did you hear about the excitement at the marina this morning? I hadn't, but I had a feeling I was about to. Apparently, someone's Tesla wouldn't start, she continued, loud enough for the entire bar to hear. Had to call a tow truck, but the driver couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Electronics just went haywire. Technology, I said with a shrug. Can't live with it. Can't live without it. Funny thing though, the car started right up once they got it to the service center, almost like someone knew exactly which fuse to pull. Several people turned to look at me with new interest. I maintained my innocent expression and took another sip of beer. Of course, I wouldn't know anything about Tesla electronics, I added. I'm more of a traditional engine guy. That got a laugh from the construction workers. Everyone knew I could fix anything with moving parts. And most people suspected my expertise extended to things that weren't supposed to move as well. The bar door opened and Vanessa walked in looking like she was heading into battle. She'd changed clothes since our workshop conversation. Now she wore jeans and a sweater that made her look approachable and down to earth. Another calculated choice. She spotted me immediately and made her way through the crowd, smiling and greeting people like she was running for office. Classic PR move. Control the narrative by controlling the environment. "Hi, honey," she said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Mind if I join you?" "Free country," I replied, gesturing to the empty stool beside me. She settled in and ordered a glass of wine, making small talk with Rita about the weather and the upcoming school fundraiser. Playing the role of concerned community member and devoted wife. I had to admire the performance. "Rita, could you turn off those silly pictures?" Vanessa asked with a laugh. "They're making me feel sorry for whoever that poor man is." "Oh, that's just Griffin," Rita replied. "You know Griff, right? Real estate guy drives the red Tesla." "Of course, I know Griff." Vanessa's voice didn't waver, but I caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "He's helped several of my clients find properties." "Very professional." "Professional," Rita repeated thoughtfully. "That's one word for it." The conversation continued for another few minutes with Vanessa working the room like a politician at a campaign stop. She asked about people's families, remembered personal details, made everyone feel important and heard. It was genuinely impressive to watch, but I noticed things she didn't. The way conversations quieted when she approached certain tables. The glances people exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. The fact that nobody invited her to join their ongoing discussions. Word was already spreading, just like I'd predicted. Small towns are like that. Information flows through invisible channels and everyone knows everything long before anyone admits to knowing anything. "Eli," Vanessa said during a lull in the conversation. "Could we talk privately for a minute?" "Sure." I followed her to a quiet corner table away from the main crowd. "This has to stop," she said in a low voice. "The pictures, the gossip, whatever game you're playing." "I'm not playing any games. I'm just having a beer with my neighbors." "Don't lie to me. I know you're behind this." She gestured toward the TV screens where Griff's face was still prominently displayed. "Rita doesn't do anything without your approval." "Rita's a grown woman who makes her own decisions," I replied. "If she wants to share funny pictures with her customers, that's between her and them. Those pictures are humiliating. They're accurate." Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I meant what I said this morning, Eli. I can destroy you if I have to. And I meant what I said, too. Go ahead and try." She stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't, and eventually she seemed to realize it. "Fine," she said, standing up. "But remember, you started this." She made her way back through the crowd, stopping to say goodbye to several people and maintaining her friendly, community-minded facade right up until she walked out the door. Rita appeared at my table within seconds of Vanessa's departure, carrying a fresh beer and wearing a satisfied expression. "That woman's got nerve," she observed. "Walking in here like nothing happened." "She's good at what she does," I admitted. "Always has been." "Good at lying." "You mean good at managing perceptions?" "There's a difference." Rita sat down across from me, lowering her voice to match the intimate setting. "You want to tell me what's really going on, or should I keep guessing?" I considered the question carefully. Rita had been my friend for 20 years, and she'd kept more secrets than a priest. But once I told her the truth, there would be no taking it back. "Let's just say some people need to learn that actions have consequences," I said finally. And some people need to learn that small towns have long memories, she added. That too. She nodded thoughtfully. Well, if anyone needs reminding about consequences and memories, I'm sure the right opportunities will present themselves. I'm sure they will. Rita stood up and headed back toward the bar, pausing to adjust the tablet that controlled the TV displays. Griff's photos disappeared, replaced by a slideshow of local business advertisements. But I noticed she kept the tablet close at hand, ready for the next time someone requested entertainment. I finished my beer and headed home, driving slowly through the quiet streets of our small town. Most of the houses were dark. Their occupants settled in for the night, but I could see the glow of televisions and computer screens through curtained windows. People were talking tonight, sharing information, drawing conclusions, making judgments about their neighbors and friends. By tomorrow morning, everyone would know something interesting had happened, even if they weren't sure exactly what. That was fine with me. I'd learned a long time ago that the most effective battles are fought in the spaces between what people know and what they think they know. Vanessa was about to get a master class in small-town communication dynamics. I just hoped she was a better student than she was a wife. Saturday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was in the garage rebuilding a carburetor for Mrs. Henderson's ancient pickup truck when a black sedan pulled into my driveway. Two men in expensive suits got out, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The older one, gay-haired and soft around the middle, introduced himself as Brady Walsh, attorney at law. The younger one stayed silent and took notes on everything I said. Mr. Mercer, we need to discuss your recent harassment of my client, Grant Griffin. I wiped my hands on a rag and gave them my full attention. Harassment, that's a strong word. Vandalism of his vehicle, distribution of embarrassing photographs, interference with his business relationships, Brady recited from a legal pad. My client is prepared to file for a restraining order unless this behavior stops immediately. Interesting. I leaned against my workbench, considering their accusations. What makes Mr. Griffin think I'm responsible for his recent troubles? Don't play dumb, Mercer. Everyone knows you have a grudge against my client. Everyone knows your client was sleeping with my wife, I corrected. That's not a grudge, that's a fact. Brady's assistant looked up from his notepad with obvious interest. This was probably more excitement than he usually got from small-town legal work. Mr. Griffin's personal relationships are not the issue here, Brady continued. The issue is your criminal behavior in response to those relationships. Criminal behavior? I laughed. What exactly am I supposed to have done? Disabled his vehicle through electronic tampering. I'm a mechanical engineer, not a computer hacker. If Mr. Griffin's car isn't working properly, maybe he should take it to a qualified technician. Distributed private photographs without consent. I don't know anything about photographs, though. I hear social media can be tricky. Pictures have a way of ending up in unexpected places. Brady was getting frustrated, which I found entertaining. He'd probably expected me to be intimidated by the legal threats and official paperwork. Mr. Mercer, my client, is willing to be reasonable about this situation. He understands that emotions are running high and he's prepared to overlook your recent actions in exchange for a written agreement to cease all contact and harassment. That's generous of him, I replied. What does this agreement involve? Complete cessation of any direct or indirect contact with Mr. Griffin, no interference with his business or personal activities, removal of any defamatory material you may have posted online, and a commitment to resolve your marital issues through proper legal channels, and in exchange, Mr. Griffin agrees not to pursue criminal charges or civil remedies for your recent behavior. I pretended to consider the offer, letting the silence stretch until Brady started shifting uncomfortably. There's just one problem with your proposal, I said finally. What's that? It assumes I've actually done something wrong. Brady's face re-eamed. Mr. Mercer, we have evidence. You have assumptions, I interrupted. You have coincidences and circumstantial observations. But you don't have evidence because I haven't broken any laws. The photographs were taken on my own property of a man who was trespassing and committing adultery with my wife. Pretty sure that falls under legal documentation of criminal activity. The vehicle tampering never happened. If Mr. Griffin's Tesla is malfunctioning, he should check his warranty coverage. Brady tried a different approach. Look, we all know what's really going on here. Your wife made some poor choices, and you're lashing out at the wrong person, but this kind of vigilante justice won't solve anything. Vigilante justice. I shook my head. I think you've been watching too many movies, counselor. I'm just a guy who fixes things for a living, trying to figure out how to handle a difficult personal situation. Then you'll sign the agreement. I'll consider it. I lied. Give me a few days to think it over. Brady handed me a business card and a copy of the proposed restraining order. Don't take too long, Mr. Mercer. My client's patience has limits. After they left, I called Rita to give her a heads up about potential legal complications. She listened to my summary of the conversation, then started laughing. They actually think they can intimidate you with lawyer tricks, she said between chuckles. These city boys don't understand small-town rules. What do you mean? I mean Brady Walsh has been trying to impress people around here for 10 years and nobody takes him seriously. His biggest case was defending that kid who stole lawn ornaments from the cemetery. Still, I should probably be careful about Eli. Honey, you worry too much. Let me handle Mr. Griffin's legal problems. Rita, what are you planning? Nothing dramatic, just a little community outreach. That afternoon, I took the boys fishing at the lake, partly to get away from the house and partly to give them a chance to ask questions about the situation with their mother. They'd been remarkably calm about the whole thing, but I knew they had to be processing a lot of conflicting emotions. Dad, Max said as he cast his line into the water. Are you and Mom going to get divorced? Probably, I admitted. I'm sorry, boys. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. It's okay, Jamie replied, surprisingly mature for a 12-year-old. We kind of figured it out when Mom started acting weird. Weird how? Always on her phone, getting dressed up for work meetings that happened at night, telling us we couldn't come with her on business trips anymore, Max explained. Plus, she started buying different food and listening to different music like she was trying to become someone else. Smart kids. They'd been paying attention to details just like their old man. What happens to us? Jamie asked. You stay with me. I said without hesitation. This house, this town, your school, your friends, none of that changes. Your mom made her choices and now she has to live with the consequences. What about Mr. Griffin? What about him? Is he going to be our stepdad or something? I almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. I seriously doubt that's going to work out the way they planned. Good, Max said firmly. I don't like him. Why not? He talks to us like we're stupid and he always smells like expensive cologne. Plus, his car makes weird noises. Weird noises? Yeah. Like electronic beeping and clicking sounds, especially when he parks it near our house. I filed that information away for future reference. Griff had been parking near our house, which meant he'd been watching us. That was an interesting development. We fished until sunset, catching enough trout for dinner and having the kind of easy conversation that had become rare over the past few months. The boys seemed relieved to finally understand what was happening, and I felt better knowing they were handling the situation with typical teenage resilience. On the drive home, my phone rang with a call from Sheriff Dave. Eli, we need to talk, he said without preamble. About what? About Grant Griffin's complaint that you're stalking and harassing him. Dave, you know me better than that. I do know you, which is why I'm calling instead of showing up at your door with paperwork. But I also know you're going through a rough patch, and sometimes good people make bad decisions when they're angry. I appreciate the concern, but I'm not doing anything that requires law enforcement intervention. Maybe not, but Griffin's lawyer is making noise about restraining orders and criminal charges. I'd hate to see this situation get out of hand. It won't. I assured him I'm handling everything through proper channels. Good. Just remember whatever's going on between you and Vanessa, it doesn't give you the right to take the law into your own hands. Understood. After I hung up, Max looked at me with concern. Are you in trouble, Dad? Nothing I can't handle, I replied. Sometimes people make threats when they're scared, hoping it will make their problems go away. Is Mr. Griffin scared of you? Mr. Griffin is scared of the truth, I said. And he should be. That night, after the boys went to bed, I sat in my workshop planning the next phase of my campaign. Brady Walsh and his legal threats didn't worry me. Small-town lawyers were all bark and no bite, especially when their clients were obviously in the wrong. But Sheriff Dave's call was a reminder that I needed to be more careful about appearances. If Griff was building a case for harassment charges, I couldn't give him any legitimate ammunition. Fortunately, I was just getting started. And the best part of my plan didn't require me to do anything illegal or even questionable. It just required me to let other people draw their own conclusions about the kind of man Grant Griffin really was. Sometimes the truth is the most effective weapon of all. The monthly Chamber of Commerce meeting was held in the school auditorium and attendance was unusually high for a Tuesday evening. Word had gotten around that there would be some interesting discussions about community standards and professional conduct. I arrived early and took a seat in the back where I could observe without drawing attention. Griff was already there, sitting in his usual front row spot and looking nervous. His black eye had faded to a yellowish green, but it was still noticeable under the harsh fluorescent lights. Vanessa entered about 10 minutes before the meeting started, accompanied by her friend Lizzie Morrison, Pete's wife, and the town's unofficial social coordinator. They chose seats in the middle section, close enough to the action to hear everything, but far enough back to make a quick exit if necessary. The meeting started with routine business, budget reports, upcoming events, new member applications, but I could feel the tension in the room, like electricity in the air before a thunderstorm. Everyone was waiting for the real show to begin. It started during the community concerns portion of the agenda when Rita stood up to address the group. I'd like to talk about professional ethics, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, specifically about the responsibility that business leaders have to maintain appropriate boundaries in their personal and professional relationships. Griff's face went pale, but he maintained his composure. He'd probably been expecting this moment and had prepared his response. As many of you know, Rita continued, there have been some concerning rumors about inappropriate conduct by certain members of our business community. I think we need to discuss whether these rumors reflect the kind of values we want to promote in our town. Chamber President Margaret Chen looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Rita, if you have specific concerns about a member's conduct, perhaps you should address them through proper channels. I am addressing them through proper channels, Rita replied smoothly. This is a public forum for community concerns, and I'm concerned about the community impact of adultery and family destruction. The word adultery hung in the air like a challenge. Several people turned to look at Griff, who was now visibly sweating despite the cool evening air. Furthermore, Rita continued, I'm concerned about the use of professional relationships and business connections to facilitate personal misconduct. When someone uses their position in the community to pursue married women, it reflects poorly on all of us. Griff finally stood up, his voice shaking slightly. I object to these vague accusations and personal attacks. If someone has specific allegations to make, they should present evidence rather than spreading gossip and innuendo. Evidence. Rita smiled sweetly. That's an interesting word choice. She pulled out her tablet and connected it to the auditorium's projection system. Within seconds, the large screen behind the podium displayed a series of text messages between Griff and Vanessa, complete with timestamps and explicit content. The gasps from the audience were audible. Someone in the front row whispered, "Oh my goodness," and several people turned to stare at Vanessa, whose face had gone completely white. Where did you get those? Griff demanded, his voice rising to near panic levels. Public records, Rita replied calmly. Amazing what people leave lying around in coffee shops and restaurants, especially when they're having heated arguments about money and custody arrangements. That wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough. Vanessa had been careless with her phone during our confrontation at the workshop, and I'd managed to forward a few interesting conversations to myself before she realized what was happening. The messages were damning detailed discussions of their affair, plans to manipulate me into accepting a divorce settlement, and worst of all, jokes about how easy it was to fool small-town rubes who didn't understand sophisticated relationships. This is a violation of privacy. Vanessa finally found her voice, standing up and pointing an accusing finger at Rita. You have no right to display private communications. Private communications about public destruction of a family. Rita shot back. Private communications that show contempt for this community and everyone in it. Margaret Chen was frantically trying to restore order, but the crowd was too engaged to be easily controlled. People were talking among themselves, pointing at the screen, and looking back and forth between Griff and Vanessa like they were watching a tennis match. I moved to suspend Mr. Griffin's membership pending a full investigation of these allegations, announced Tom Bradley, who owned the hardware store and had never liked Griff's flashy sales tactics. Seconded, called out at least 3 other voices. This is ridiculous, Griff protested. You can't make business decisions based on personal gossip. We can make decisions based on professional conduct, Tom replied. And your conduct reflects poorly on the entire organization. The vote was swift and decisive. Griff's membership was suspended by a margin of 28-4 with 6 abstentions. He stormed out of the auditorium, followed by Vanessa and Lizzie, while the remaining members continued discussing the implications of the evening's revelations. I slipped out during the commotion and made my way to the parking lot where I found Griff pacing beside his Tesla while Vanessa and Lizzie tried to calm him down. This is your fault, he was saying to Vanessa. You said you could handle your husband, keep him from causing problems. I tried, Vanessa replied defensively. But Eli's more vindictive than I expected. Vindictive? I stepped out of the shadows, causing all 3 of them to jump. That's an interesting way to describe someone who's tired of being lied to. Eli. Vanessa looked genuinely frightened for the first time since this whole situation began. How long have you been standing there? Long enough, I replied. Interesting meeting tonight. Very educational. Griff tried to regain his composure, puffing out his chest and attempting to look intimidating. Mercer, this has gone far enough. You're destroying innocent people's reputations over a personal grudge. Innocent people? I laughed. That's rich coming from someone who just got publicly exposed for adultery and fraud. Fraud? Lizzie looked confused. What fraud? Oh, you didn't know. I pulled out my phone and showed them a series of screenshots. Griff's been using Chamber of Commerce connections to get inside information on property deals, then steering clients toward purchases that benefit his personal investments. Griff's face went from red to purple. That's not illegal. Maybe not illegal, but definitely unethical and definitely against Chamber rules about conflicts of interest. Vanessa was staring at Griff with growing alarm. You didn't tell me about any business problems. There are no business problems, he insisted. This is all fabricated nonsense designed to make me look bad. The bank records are fabricated? I asked innocently. The property transfer documents, the client complaints filed with the state licensing board. What client complaints? Vanessa's voice was barely above a whisper. The ones filed by people who discovered that Griff was getting kickbacks from developers in exchange for steering buyers toward overpriced properties, I explained. Turns out the state takes that kind of thing pretty seriously. That was the moment when everything fell apart for them. Vanessa realized that her lover wasn't the successful businessman she thought he was, and Griff realized that his legal and financial problems were just beginning. This is all your fault. Vanessa turned on me with fury. You've destroyed everything out of spite and jealousy. I've exposed the truth. I corrected. There's a difference. The truth? She laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're a small-minded, controlling man who can't accept that his wife found someone better. Someone better? I gestured toward Griff, who was now frantically making phone calls and looking increasingly desperate. Someone who's about to lose his real estate license and probably face criminal charges for fraud. Vanessa looked back and forth between Griff and me, finally understanding that she'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. She'd traded a stable marriage and family for a relationship with a man whose entire life was built on lies and manipulation. I want to go home, she said quietly. Which home? I asked. Because you're not welcome in mine anymore. Eli, please. The boys need their mother. The boys need stability and honesty, I replied. Two things you've proven you can't provide. Griff finished his phone calls and rejoined our conversation, looking like a man who'd just received very bad news. My lawyer says the state investigation could take months. He announced. And the chamber suspension means I can't access any of the networking events or referral programs. Poor baby, I said with mock sympathy. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with other men's wives. He took a step toward me, fists clenched, but I didn't back down. After everything that had happened, a physical confrontation almost seemed anticlimactic. Go ahead, I encouraged him. Take a swing. Give me an excuse to finish what we started at the cabin. Sheriff Dave's patrol car pulled into the parking lot at that moment, ending the standoff before it could escalate. He got out slowly, looking tired and annoyed. Evening, folks, he said with professional neutrality. Got a report about a disturbance. No disturbance here, Dave, I replied. Just a community discussion about ethics and accountability. Aha. He looked around at our group, taking in Griff's agitated state and Vanessa's tear-streaked makeup. Maybe it's time for everyone to go home and cool off. Good idea, I agreed. Some of us have work in the morning. As I walked toward my truck, I heard Vanessa calling my name. I turned back to see her standing alone. Griff and Lizzie had apparently decided to make their own exits. This isn't how I wanted things to end, she said. Then you shouldn't have started it, I replied. What happens now? Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without destroying anyone else's family. I drove home through quiet streets, thinking about justice and consequences and the price of betrayal. The boys were waiting up for me, eager to hear about the meeting, and I gave them an edited version of the evening's events. So, Mr. Griffin's in trouble? Max asked. Mr. Griffin's learning that actions have consequences, I replied. And Mom, your mom's learning the same lesson. They seemed satisfied with that explanation. And we spent the rest of the evening playing cards and talking about normal things, school, sports, weekend plans, the kind of conversation I'd been missing for months while Vanessa was busy destroying our family. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang with a call from Rita. How are you feeling? She asked. Tired? I admitted, but satisfied. Good. You should be proud of yourself, Eli. You handled that whole situation with more class than most people would have managed. I just wanted the truth to come out. Well, it's definitely out now. The whole town will be talking about tonight for months. And Griff. Griff's finished in this town. His business, his reputation, his social connections, all gone. He'll probably have to move somewhere else and start over. What about Vanessa? Rita was quiet for a moment. That's up to her, I guess. She can stay and try to rebuild her reputation, or she can follow her boyfriend to whatever rock he crawls under. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. No, Rita agreed. It's not. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop for a while, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented my real life, the life I'd built through honest work and genuine relationships. Vanessa had tried to destroy that life, but she'd failed. The truth had a way of winning in the end, especially in small towns where people remembered everything and forgave very little. Griff and Vanessa had learned that lesson the hard way, and now they would have to live with the consequences of their choices. As for me, I had a business to run and boys to raise and a community that respected me for who I really was. That was more than enough for any man. The devil, as they say, is in the details. And I'd always been very good with details.